GCSE, Year 10. Chemistry Paper, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to this GCSE chemistry lesson. Today we're learning about atoms, which is part of Paper 1 and one of the most important topics you'll study in Year 10. Everything around us is made of atoms, so let's start by asking a simple question. What is an atom made of? An atom is made of 3 subatomic particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now, atoms are incredibly small. So how big is an atom? The radius of an atom is about 0.1 nanometers, which means you cannot see it, even with a microscope. Inside every atom is a tiny center called the nucleus. You might wonder, where are protons and neutrons found? They are found inside the nucleus. The nucleus is extremely small compared to the rest of the atom. In fact, how much smaller is it? The nucleus is about 10,000 times smaller than the whole atom. You may also notice that the nucleus has a positive charge. Why is the nucleus positive? It is positive because it contains protons. So let's quickly check the charges of the particles. Which particle is positive? That's the proton. Which particle has no charge at all? That's the neutron. And which particle is negative? That's the electron. Next, let's think about mass. Does the electron have much mass? No, an electron has very little mass, much smaller than a proton or neutron. So if electrons have very little mass, where is most of the atom's mass found? Almost all of the mass is in the nucleus. Electrons do not sit in the nucleus. Instead, they move around it. Where do electrons move? They move in areas called electron shells, which go around the nucleus. These shells can only hold a certain number of electrons. How many electrons can the first shell hold? It can hold 2 electrons. How many can the second shell hold? It can hold 8 electrons. Electrons always fill the shells in order. So, which shell fills first? Electrons always fill the shell closest to the nucleus first. Let's look at an example. The element boron. You might ask, how many electrons are in boron's second shell? Boron has 3 electrons in its second shell. Now let's move on to elements. What is an element? An element is a substance made of only one type of atom. But what actually makes one element different from another? Which particle decides the element? The answer is the number of protons. That's why all carbon atoms are carbon. Why? Because they all have 6 protons. Each element also has a symbol. How are element symbols written? The first letter is capital, and if there is a second letter, it is lowercase. For example, what is the symbol for sodium? The symbol is Na. Now let's talk about charge. What makes an atom neutral? A neutral atom has the same number of protons and electrons. If this balance changes, the atom becomes charged. What do we call a charged atom? A charged atom is called an ion. So what happens if an atom loses an electron? It becomes positive, because it now has more protons than electrons. And what happens if an atom gains electrons? It becomes a negative ion. You may also wonder about the charges themselves. Are proton and electron charge the same size? Yes, they are the same size, but opposite in charge. Going back to structure, where are protons and neutrons always found? They are always found in the nucleus. How many electron shells does a boron atom have? Boron has 2 electron shells. And how many electrons does a neutral helium atom have? It has 2 electrons, the same as its number of protons. Although atoms contain particles, most of the atom is actually empty. So, what makes up most of the atom's volume? The answer is empty space. Finally, let's think about neutrons. Why doesn't adding a neutron change the element? Because adding a neutron does not change the number of protons, and the number of protons defines the element. Well done for staying focused through this lesson. Atoms are tiny, but understanding them is essential for GCSE chemistry. Pause the video, replay any parts you found tricky, and make sure you remember these key words: atom, nucleus, proton, neutron, electron, ion.